Like a
You're
lot
gonna
of
wrap that car around a
teenagers
tree one
don't
day.
think and they think they're invincible.
Wrap my car around a tree, at least I'll die happy.
End up being like a bean in a can.
When you're so young, you take it for granted that you have so much ahead of you. The idea of like death looming around is like just, it's not like a part of your life.
I went to the liquor store with my friend Chris. I bought a 12-pack with some really bad fake ID. Went to local hangout. Drank about 6 beers there, and it was enough to make me feel that I could do more than I could, that I could go fast. Just gives you that, that overconfidence.
I had no fear in speeding because it was just about an everyday occurrence for me. I was your average cocky little high school kid who thought they were invincible and nothing was gonna happen to them. And no matter how many times I heard stories like this, it still just wasn't gonna happen to me.
I never thought it would happen to me. Ooh, Superman, invincibility, anything you want to say, I was it. I decided to go to my friend Andrea and ask her if I could borrow her new car. It was a convertible with a V8 engine. She was, to say the least, hesitant to give it to me because the night before, her father told her that he never wanted me driving the car alone. He knew that I wouldn't have respect for the car because I didn't buy it. I don't pay the insurance or anything. It was basically like a joyriding car for me.
What gets me going is like for the split second of just not looking at the road. My front left wheel hit the curb and I lost control of the car. The car flipped over about 3 times. The car was just wrecked totally. I received severe lacerations to my forehead. Right now my scars don't look that bad, but what had happened was my nose was sliced here and it was flipped. And then this was gashed. My eyebrows were ripped off. My whole forehead was gone and about like this much of my face.
I was told that Tori said, "Joel, slow down before you kill all of us."
I turned around to talk to one of my friends in the back. And when I turned back towards the road, car flipped over a couple times, hit a tree, landed on its back.
Before we got on the highway, a friend and I were getting in some ridiculous argument. I turned up the music to shut her up, and the white car cut me off, and it was rush hour, so traffic slowed down to a stop, and I swerved to the left to avoid hitting them, and I slammed on the brakes, so I fishtailed into the divider and crumpled the front left end of the car. I hit my head on the steering wheel, and I fractured this eye socket bone right here.
I hit a divot in the road. The car went into a spin. I hit a tree on the side of my car. The car split into half. The rear end of my car hit another tree. The 3 of them who had been sitting in the back seat were all thrown completely from the car.
When I pulled out, I had the top down, this music system blasting, driving roughly 80, 85 miles an hour. I saw an old car pull out in front of me, and I decided to just pass him in the left lane on a double yellow lane road. He ended up making a left into his driveway. He didn't know to look over his shoulder to see if someone was passing him. It's a double yellow line. I shouldn't have been there. He turns into his driveway, and I see him turning, and I hit the brakes, and I skid for, I think it was 76 to 80 feet, and I hit him with the front right of my car, hit the back left of his car.
I was partially ejected from the car. Raymond had some pretty bad brain injury and some more severe cuts on his body. Megan got a nice cut right across her neck. Tori was skinny as anything and hit a stone wall and died on impact. Tori and I grew up together. I mean, I guess that's why it makes it so much harder.
I crawled out the passenger side window, and my friend Chris crawled out after me. I looked around the car, couldn't really find anything. I couldn't see inside the car because it was crushed. I remember them taking my friend Mike out, and I remember he was covered with blood from the head, like kind of down. And, you know, I remember that pretty vividly.
We went off the road and sailed right into a tree. Seems like we were skidding there forever, and I had so much time where I could, you know, all these other things I could have done. You know, that skid, I seem to remember happening in slow motion. Neither of us were wearing our seatbelts, so I hit the steering wheel, luckily, which saved my life. And unfortunately for him, he hit the windshield, which is a little bit less forgiving. He died 3 days later from a brain injury.
On the impact, I did lose all consciousness. Then on the way to the hospital, they got a pulse back into me, but I remained in a coma for about 13 days or so and slowly started to come out of that. I did have brain injury. I blew my spleen up. My pancreas had some injuries to it, and my liver and kidney were both punctured by my ribs. So they had to basically sew all my inside body parts back together.
I really was kind of in shock seeing all this happen, and it all seemed to happen so fast. Because, I mean, this all happened in a span of, you know, a minute from the time when I crashed and when the policeman finally came up to me and did, you know, a sobriety check.
You could see like glass breaking, hood coming up, you could hear the fender dragging along the ground, side panel gone, steering wheel shifting. On his car, he had a huge dent. You could see the tire was bent in on the back. The door was totally pushed in. It only took a second to hit him. It felt like an eternity. I was wearing a seatbelt. It saved my life.
None of us had our seatbelts on at the time. It was a high school thing and teenage thing. You don't need one. You're too cool.
I was real close with both guys. I had known them since probably 6th grade. We used to play, we were on the same baseball team, me and Rick. His father was a coach. Rick was killed instantly from, I guess, massive head internal injuries. Mike was brought to the hospital and died a little bit later that night.
In the hospital, I went from being in intensive care to the 12th floor, which is where they taught me how to walk again. They had to teach me what 2 + 2 was again. They had to pretty much teach you everything that you have to teach a 3-year-old little kid.
I hope this guy's all right. And I get out, and it's this older man. I just hope that he wasn't hurt.
They brought me to the police station. You know, I sat there for a couple hours. They did a breathalyzer test. They did fingerprints, mug shots. Finally, towards a couple hours later, my parents came in.
While I was in the hospital, my parents knew that there were going to be charges and that I was going to need an attorney because Tori had died.
Both Rick and Mike had not survived. And they charged me right there with 2 counts of second-degree manslaughter with a motor vehicle, driving while intoxicated, reckless driving, speeding, and they released me on bond that night.
The officer pulls me aside and he says I could charge you with assault with a deadly weapon. I was going triple over the speed limit and just double as assault with a deadly weapon, and it's intent to kill. It was totally preventable. I made it a crash. It wasn't an accident.
You know, the next day I went to both the funerals, and that was really hard because, I mean, there was you know, hundreds of people at these funerals, and you know, I was the reason they were there.
They just kept telling me how it wasn't my fault, and the more they told me it wasn't my fault, the more upset I got. It was my fault. I was driving.
I got a speeding ticket. I had to pay for the old man's car, Blue Book value, and I had to pay for half the damages of Andrea's car. $4,000 for one car and $2,500 for another car, you know, kind of blew me away.
For about 9 months, I went back and forth to court. When I pled guilty, they set a sentencing date. So it's basically both sides tell the judge what they think the sentence should be. And then the judge, it's up to the judge. He decides. There was a lot of anger directed at me, which, rightly so, to hear, the suffering that they've gone through and still go through. And eventually, at the end, I was allowed to speak. I kept breaking up, and it was just hard to say it clearly, and it was, I was just apologizing to the families and to everybody.
I told Andrea, originally, oh, it's not that big a deal, and kind of tried to downplay it for her because she just hysterically started crying as soon as I told her we're not friends anymore. It wasn't worth it. Everyone in school made fun of me because everyone knew what happened. I lost my bank account. I lost my parents' trust. I lost one of my best friends.
My sentence was 10 years of jail time suspended after 4 years. This means that it's a 10-year jail sentence, but you only have to serve 4 of it. If you violate your probation, the judge can impose the remaining 6 years of the sentence.
For Tori's death, I was charged with misconduct with the motor vehicle, and for Raymond and Megan's injuries, I was charged with assault with the motor vehicle. I was given 3 years suspended sentence, 300 hours community service, and 3 years probation.
The conditions of my probation are 1,000 hours community service, attending AA meetings, and not driving during the length of my probation for 5 years. Prison's not a fun place. It's just, I don't know. It's just not the place you want to be at. That's pretty much all I can say about it. It'll always be on my record that I'm a convicted felon. That's not something that's ever going to go away.
I also have a Class D felony on my record because of Tori's death. When I go for a job interview and on that application it says, have you ever been convicted of a felon, yes or no? If yes, please explain. I've got to check off that yes.
This could happen to anybody. It happened so fast. And I hadn't had a ton to drink. I had enough to just make me overconfident. So, it can happen real easy.
I hate telling this story. I hate telling what I did, telling what happened. But if I could save one kid's life, then it's worth it. And I wouldn't want the world's worst person to have to deal with a quarter of the emotions that I have to deal with. It's not worth it for anybody.
I miss both my friends, hanging out and things like that.